A new year brings new goals, new dreams, and new ambitions. And look, now that we're at the end of the month, you may find yourself losing momentum or sinking back into the same old habits that got you stuck and feeling unfulfilled in the first place. But don't despair. This is not a sprint. It is your race to run at whatever pace you need. And it's one of the reasons why I asked Mitch Matthews to join me this week. If there's something holding you back from getting the results you want in your career, what would be different if you actually gave yourself permission to learn, dream, think, be challenged, and even fail? In this episode, Mitch will share with us what it means to give ourselves permission and a whole lot more. So let's get started. Hello, my friends. Welcome to the Mid-Career GPS podcast. I'm your host, John Nerrell. This is the show for mid-career professionals who feel stuck, undervalued, or unsure what's next, and know that doing more isn't the answer. Here, we focus on how you show up. That means how you make clear decisions, build influence, and take control of your career. So whether you're navigating a career change, seeking a promotion, or simply redefining success, I'm glad you're here. Now, my guest this week is Mitch Matthews. Mitch is a success coach, keynote speaker, and the creator of the Top 1% podcast, Dream, Think, Do. Through the podcast and his coaching, Mitch helps high-achieving leaders and entrepreneurs dream bigger, think better, and do more of what they were put on the planet to do. He's been honored to interview some of the most influential thinkers on the planet, from best-selling authors like Brendan Burchard, Michael Hyatt, and Jamie Kern Lima, to Oscar winners, elite athletes, and world-class entrepreneurs. And my friends, if you did not get a chance to read Jamie Kern Lima's book, Worthy, that she published last year, I want to invite you to get that. That book is an incredible read. Now, as a speaker and elite success coach, Mitch has also spent 2 decades working with leaders from organizations like Nike, NASA, Disney, and United Airlines, where he helps leaders clarify their purpose and lead with impact. Mitch is also the creator of the Authority Bridge, a high-touch coaching experience that helps seasoned professionals build a coaching and speaking business that's aligned, strategic, and legacy-worthy. Mitch lives a highly caffeinated life in Des Moines, Iowa with his wife, Melissa, and they have 2 wildly creative sons. Mitch graciously offers a free training to all of you in this episode with a special discount code GPS. I will link up to this in the show notes, but you will hear more about this training toward the end of the episode. So don't forget to go and check the show notes for a link and that coupon code to the free training. Thank you very much, Mitch. All right, my friends, let's get into it. It is my pleasure to introduce you to Mitch Matthews. Mitch Matthews, welcome to the podcast. It is great to have you here today.
Thank you, John. It is an honor. Love what you're doing, and it's great to be here.
Well, right back at you. And I appreciate all of the back and forth we've had to try to get you on here. I know we had a couple scheduling things and stuff, but that's just because you're out there doing some amazing work.
Yeah.
And excited to talk about this whole idea with you today about what it means for mid-career professionals to ask for permission.
Yes.
All right. But before we get there, what was your mid-career moment?
I love this question. And of course, there's been many, but when I think about the theme of your show and what you talk with so many amazing people about, that moment for me was I had been in the pharmaceutical industry for about a decade and really had a lot of success, had a lot of fun. It had been a good fit for me. I'd been in the sales end of things, got promoted into the training department, which was a great fit, really enjoyed things. And then I got a promotion. And within a day, I figured out I'd moved into a bad fit job. And I don't know if you've ever had that moment, but everything had looked great on paper, but literally within 24 hours, I just knew it. And I would have loved to say that I could take a big blind leap of faith and quit that job and go do something I was passionate about. But I joke, but it's absolutely true. We were living a sitcom life. My wife was staying home with our boys at the time. So we were in a single income, two children, oppressive mortgage situation. So I couldn't just quit that bad fit job. I had to stay with it. And I did. I committed to bringing excellence, figuring out a way to get the job done, but I had to find a way to also fuel my soul and find what was next. And really, for me, it was 2 years of experimenting on the side with some of the things that I've been passionate about my whole life. And really kind of waking up a dream of an entrepreneurial track and journey of starting our own business. And so I did that. I started a business on the side of that bad fit job of coaching and speaking, and I was able to build that. And I thought it was going to be about a 5 year thing to get to the place where I could replace my income and do it with confidence and boldness and have it be a great fit. But a lot of hard work, a lot of prayer, some duct tape. And we were able to do that in 2 years. So that bad fit job was painful in the beginning. I wouldn't wish it on anybody, but at the same time, I wouldn't give it up for anything because it woke me up to what I was supposed to be doing.
Yeah. Yeah, never underestimate the power of prayer and the power of duct tape.
Right? Exactly right. Those two together, unstoppable combination. That's exactly right.
Exactly. So, Mitch, what you just shared in terms of finding yourself in a bad fit job is certainly not uncommon for a lot of mid-career professionals. So, if you take us back to that time and you recognize you're not in the best place and you've got all the responsibilities of being the primary income for your family and wanting to take care of your family and all, where do you start to give yourself permission to be a little bolder?
Yeah, I love that. And permission is so important because like you and I have talked about, permission, we are in a permission-based culture. And with permission, oftentimes we think that somebody else has to give us permission, right? In school, that happens. We get picked for classes, we get picked for teams. In college, same thing. We have to wait for somebody to give us permission to come to their school. All those things. In our jobs, oftentimes we have to wait till somebody gives us permission to have a certain position. All of those things. So permission is one of those things that we are prepared to walk out. But when it comes to these kinds of conversations, this is when we have to remember to give ourselves permission. And you can't wait for somebody else to give you permission to explore what's next. And that's what I had to do. I had to give myself permission to say, hey, wait, I can't wait for somebody to, hand me that next job or offer me that next position. I had to say, what are some things that I'd love to do? What are some things I'd love to try? And that's where the permission started for me. I had to go back and inventory. What are my strengths? What are the things that I love to do? What are the things that I naturally do? When I thought back to my positions that I had really thrived in, I had to think, like, what was at the core of what I was doing? And I realized, I was really good at building relationships, delivering excellence, but boy, I was at my best when I was encouraging others, when I was drawing out their best. And it's funny because on a particular bad day, and I'd love to say it was all, especially the realizing that I wanted to be a coach and a speaker and all those things. I would love to say it was all my epiphany, but you can't do permission alone. And so I was on this journey of inventorying what I was good at and what I enjoyed and where I flowed. But on a particularly bad day, I came home and my wife put a magazine in front of me and she said, "This is what you do." And she pointed at a particular article. And it was an article about a really successful entrepreneur in an industry that I had no interest in, no understanding for. And I said, "Honey, I don't get it. What are you talking about?" She's like, "Oh, no, not that main article. It's the sidebar article." And I saw this sidebar article about this entrepreneur's coach. and their work together and what the coach had done for and with this entrepreneur to, kind of draw out their best, get clarity, help them to put a plan together, all those kinds of things. She's like, that's what you do. You are so good at that. That's what you naturally do. That's what you do at work. That's what you do at church. That's what you do in our community. I'm like, you know what? You're right. And at that point, I'll be honest, John, like, I didn't know coaching was even a thing. Like, I didn't
Sure.
know that that was a job. I didn't know that that was a business. And so, again, you have to give yourself permission to start exploring, but remember, don't do it alone.
Mm. What I appreciate about that is that there's this opportunity in front of us, right? That when we give
Yep.
ourselves permission, we can kind of show up and be open to these new opportunities and explore what could be there.
Yep.
What I'm curious about, though, Mitch, is that for a mid-career professional who works in an organization where they are not allowed to fail,
Yeah.
okay,
Yep.
that it's high pressure, high demand. I'm sure from your work in pharma, you
Yep.
get that, right?
Yep. Absolutely.
What is the shift that a mid-career professional needs to make when they're bombarded at work about how you can't fail,
Yeah.
and yet they're thinking about doing something different or changing what they're doing,
Yeah.
where now they're like, well, maybe I can give myself permission to fail. How does
Yeah.
that work?
I love that. And I think that's so grounded, John, because I think sometimes when you hear personal development, it's kind of the airy fairy, little ponies kind of stuff. And
Woo
you're
woo.
exactly right. Exactly right. Your audience especially has to deliver. I am sure your audience is committed to delivering results, delivering excellence. Absolutely. And I so needed to continue to do that in that bad fit job. And so one of the things that I talk about, especially when it comes to permission, is there are ways to give yourself permission within your job, within your career. But in some ways, the easier place to start with giving yourself this kind of permission to start exploring is outside of work. Giving yourself the permission to say, hey, what are some experiments that I could do outside my day job? Now, I will say with a caveat that I also know that I didn't have a ton of free time when I was in that bad fit job. So if I would have heard that advice, I might have immediately said, "Whoa, whoa, I don't have time for a mountain retreat. I don't have time to go to Fiji and sit at a beach and experiment there." And I'd be say, absolutely. My biggest recommendation for people is to find 15 minutes 15 minutes a day. Because oftentimes when I'm coaching and working with people, I'll say, you probably can't find an extra week somewhere. You can't find scads of just spare time laying around. But could you find 15 minutes? And people will often say, well, maybe I could find 15 minutes, each day. And I'll say, hey, just 5 days a week, 15 minutes, 5 days a week. What's amazing about that is if you do the math, I'm not a math elite, so I had to do this math many times. But if you give yourself 15 minutes a day, just 5 days a week, over the course of the year, that's 60 hours. It doesn't feel like a lot at the time, but it's more than a full work week for most people. To be able to do some experiments. And those experiments can be, hey, what's something I can intentionally listen to? Your podcast is a great example. Somebody spending just a little bit of time developing themselves, finding something that might inspire them, encourage them, all those things. Who's a coffee that you can have intentionally? Somebody that fuels you, somebody that's doing something interesting, something that maybe charges you up. Maybe you're something you're curious about. Who's something you can learn from? I think, in our day and age, we have the ability to find mentors, and some of those can be real, tangible mentors. Some of those can be virtual mentors. To be able to say, all right, what are those 15-minute things? But I'll give you a great example of somebody who did this. Sean Askinosie is somebody who I had on my podcast, Dream Think Do. And Sean was a winning, wildly successful trial attorney. And you just couldn't beat him. He was as flawless in his delivery, in his strategy, in his tactic. But he knew deep down he was losing his fire. He didn't want to admit that. He didn't want to acknowledge it, but in some ways he knew he needed to start doing something to try to relight that fire because he wasn't losing. It wasn't showing up in the courtroom, but he knew the foundations was cracking. And so he just started giving himself permission to do some experiments. He actually did some night classes in things that were outside of his normal work. Like he took some cooking classes. That's where he started. He thought, hey, I used to like to cook when I had time to do that. Maybe, relighting the fire there. And what he found out was he was not good at cooking, John. He was like, no, okay, this is not good, right? But one of those nights, they worked on chocolate. And he realized, whoa, I love chocolate, but I'm actually pretty good at that. And so he then took another class, took an online course, and just started to experiment with chocolate. And what was really interesting was he really enjoyed it, and finding some enjoyment and satisfaction in something outside of his work did start to light that fire again. But as he continued to experiment with chocolate, he also started to dig into the industry and started to realize that there was a lot of injustice within the industry. And so he took a vacation with his daughter to go and meet with some growers, some cocos bean growers. And he started to have a fire for the industry and the people that were in the industry and the people that were further down the chain, and not the big business, but the growers. And what's amazing now is fast forward through a series of 15-minute experiments, he now has Askinosie chocolate, which is one of Oprah's favorite chocolates.
Oh my gosh.
In his story, that passion turned into something where he now does chocolate differently. He partners with the growers and has open book finances. So they actually get to profit share with Sean as his company grows. So he found his heart for justice, met something new, and now he's having wild success. And when you talk with Sean, you can see the fire is fully lit. And for him, he did it the way your listeners would do it. He didn't chuck his responsibilities. He didn't drop off in the way that he delivered in the courtroom. He continued to do that until he found that next thing, and he did that with excellence.
That's such a great story.
Yeah.
That is really, really good. And what I like about it is, and especially when you talk about 15 minutes a day, 5 days a week, which is you got to give yourself that time, right?
Yeah.
You have to give yourself that time to just allow yourself the space to figure out what's going to be next.
Yep.
All right. So here's my question. We saw AI completely exponentially change the way we do things.
Right.
Okay. And a lot of conversations I have with my coaching clients and in my work, there is a urgency, but also a necessity that AI is then the go-to. So whether it's ChatGPT or Copilot or Claude or whatever it is that they're using, right?
Yep.
AI is going to be the thing. It's going to optimize your resume. It's going to change your LinkedIn profile. It's going to build you a job search strategy. It's going to help you figure out all the stuff that's going on at work and everything like that. As I was preparing for our conversation, this whole idea about asking for permission to not have all the answers struck me really hard. Because in a day and age where we're felt like we have to have all of the answers at our fingertips,
Yeah.
how do you help your clients slow down and give themselves permission for it to be a little messy or to not have all the answers so they can do exactly what you ask them to do, which is to dream bigger, think better, and do more?
Yeah. I love that. So let's back up with the permission to not have all the answers. I think this is wildly important, especially for your leaders, because I think as leaders, we feel tremendous pressure to always have the answers, right? To always have the solutions. And that's a big part of why we got the job that we got, that we're in, right? That we delivered, we have brought the goods, we have gotten the results. And so as a leader, oftentimes the way we feel like, hey, the way that we brought results in the past is the way that we need to continue to bring results in the future. And as a leader, but this also applies to being a parent, a spouse, a friend, Some of the ways that we can bring the most value is to not, in fact, have all the answers, but to draw those answers out of others. And what I love, especially in this day and age, and I'm glad you brought up AI because it is definitely the elephant in the room. Heck, it's probably three elephants in the room, let's just be honest. And we're
True.
all figuring it out, right? It's a little bit like, COVID a few years ago. It was the first time we were all dealing with the same massive problem all at the same time, right? Everybody has problems, everybody has issues, but COVID was one of the first times where almost everybody on the planet was dealing with the same thing. AI falls into that same category, and you could identify it as a problem, you could identify it as an opportunity. I think it's both, right? So part of it is the perspective to say, okay, what are we open to? I don't want to stay blind to anything. I don't want to be offended or scared, because when we're offended, when we're scared, we're often blind to, some of the solutions that are right there in front of us, all those things. But as leaders, yeah, part of the way we're tempted to think we bring value is to have all the answers, but really the best way is to bring value by asking questions, to draw out the best from our team and those around us. So one of the questions that I love to equip leaders on, especially in this subject of permission not to have all the answers, is if a team member comes to you and says, hey, what should we do? Right? Or what's the answer here? Or what's the next step? One of the most powerful questions is one of the most simple questions. It's a phrase and then a question. I don't know, but let's figure it out together. Right? And what that does is that actually holds the person that you're talking to as capable, right? Which is a huge signal. But then it also invites them into the solution and makes them not completely dependent on you, but also it does allow for new opportunities, new ways to explore those next things, right? So when it comes to AI, especially, to be able to say, hey, as leaders, we're all navigating this together. And it's that thing of being able to go, I don't know. I don't know exactly what the solutions are here, but let's dive in. Let's figure it out together. And what's interesting, I think, as team members hear that, right? I know for me, I was tempted, especially as, I moved up in pharma, but then also moved, we built our own organization. There was always the temptation for, what people say to maintain a persona, which is, Latin for a mask. And that is to fake it, kind of that fake it till you make it. But that fake it till you make it, generally when somebody's trying to maintain a persona, the only person that believes the persona is working is the person hiding behind the persona, right? And I think a leader, oftentimes those leaders that try to say, I'll just make up an answer, I'll just make a guess, right? Almost everybody knows. It's like, okay, that's maybe you're not as confident as you think you are, or maybe you shouldn't be as confident as you appear to be, right? When we offer that phrase to be able to say, hey, I don't know, but let's figure it out together, that actually builds confidence, that builds trust, that builds connection. But it also gives you permission to continue to explore what might be next.
And thank you for that. Thank you for that reframing as well, because we don't always have all the answers. We're not supposed to have all the answers.
Exactly right.
Yeah,
exactly
we're not supposed
right.
to have them.
Yeah. And some of our best, I know for our company now, we have a full training company where we do coaching and speaking and online training. And some of the best solutions that we've come across, developed ourselves, all of those things, we're generally on the other side of saying, yeah, I don't know what to do, but who could we be learning from? What's that next step? What might that next step be? How do we figure this out together? And you mentioned I've got a great team. It's like, hey, why not trust them to actually, to draw out some of the solutions that they see too. So it's a powerful thing, especially for somebody like me that's a recovering perfectionist. Oh boy. That being able to say, I don't know, but let's figure it out together is so freeing.
Yeah. Nice. What are you most excited about for 2026 professionally?
I love it. I do think we are in many ways facing a blank canvas, which is an exciting time. I'm glad you brought up AI, because I think that we are moving into a season in leadership, but also in products and services and all of those things where we're going to be able to automate at a level that we've never been able to do it before. But the thing I think I'm most excited about for 2026, and who knows after this, but at least for this year, I think with that increased chance and opportunity for automation, there's going to be an increased longing for authenticity. And so I'm really looking forward to exploring that and setting up opportunities and events and services that actually pull people back into full connection and true authenticity. Because I don't know about you, but AI is powerful. We're using it in so many different areas. But boy, if you spend so much time there, it starts to feel like all you're eating is cotton candy.
Yes.
And it's like I long for a good steak. We went to a rodeo this weekend, John. We went to a rodeo, so we went for a rodeo meal before, and so we had steaks and we had just like potatoes and all of this stuff we don't normally eat, I suppose. And it just felt real. It felt tangible, and I think people are longing for a little steak. You know what I mean? Whether people eat or eat red meat or not.
Right.
It's that thing of I think this is a year where people are longing for true connection and authenticity. So that's something I'm excited about exploring.
I wholeheartedly agree.
Yeah.
I absolutely agree with you on that. Mitch, I've so enjoyed this conversation. As we start to wrap up here, for the people who are listening, what advice would you give them to help them build their mid-career GPS to whatever's next for them in their career?
I love it. One of the things I would say, and I mentioned this, I'm a recovering perfectionist, John. So, and what's interesting about perfectionism is it tends to be misunderstood. A lot of people think, oh, a perfectionist, their kitchen is well organized, their home could be on the cover of Elle Decor, their desk is everything's in its spot. But perfectionists, we're pile people. We tend to like, there's a pile, you can't quite see it. My camera's set up in a specific way, so you can't, but there's a pile right at the corner of my desk. Because I'm a recovering perfectionist. Because what perfectionists do is we tend to go to a meeting, bring a couple of papers back, set it on that pile, saying I don't have the perfect place to put it. But once I do, that's where it's going. And then that pile grows. Somebody's going to come see at your desk. You move that pile under your desk or in a box or in a bag or all of those things, right? Perfectionists also, we need deadlines because nothing's ever perfect. So we need that deadline to just get that final project done and send it, all those things. So as a perfectionist, I bring that up because a lot of people think they're procrastinators, but actually they're perfectionists. And I bring that up, especially when it comes to the subject of experimenting, because you have to acknowledge sometimes it's hard to experiment or give yourself permission to start something, even if it's 15 minutes at a time, to start something because it might be messy initially. You may not have all the answers to start, right? You may not know all the steps. In fact, you won't. And so you have to almost soothe that inner perfectionist. And your listeners are probably way healthier than I am, John. So maybe they don't deal with this, right? But I always say, hey, find those ways to start small, right? That's the best way to wind up eventually dreaming big and accomplishing massive things, is to give yourself permission to start small. And it's even better if you give yourself permission to start messy. That's why I love 15 minutes. Like 15 minutes of a thing can't get too messy. It can get a little messy, but it allows you to say, all right, I don't have to have it all figured out, but for this next 15 minutes, I'm going to try this. I'm going to have this quick conversation. I'm going to listen to this. I'm going to read, this half chapter of a book. And it's what's amazing, like we talked about, 15 minutes a day, 5 days a week for a full year, that's 65 hours. You'll be amazed at where you'll be at the end of that year if you give yourself that permission to start small, but do it repeatedly.
Nice. Thank you for that.
Yeah.
That's a great way for us to wrap up this January and kick off 2026. So, Mitch, thank you so much for being a wonderful guest. If people want to find you, connect with you, learn more about you, your podcast, I'm going to turn the mic over to you. Please share all the great things where people can
love
connect.
it. Absolutely. Well, I invite your people to come to mitchmatthews.com. That's probably the best place to start our conversation, they can certainly check out my Dream, Think, Do podcast. But we put a gift together for your crew, and we've got a new webinar. It's called Finding Time for Your Next Chapter, and it's helping people to find that time, even those 15-minute chunks, to be able to figure out and chart out what that next chapter might be. And it's a $97 workshop, but for your folks, they can go to mitchmatthews.com/time. That'll get them access to the webinar. But if they use the coupon code GPS, so it's a tribute and a shout out to you. If they use that, they will get the workshop, the webinar for free. So it goes from a $97 webinar that a lot of people really enjoyed to be able to dive into that. We get you tactics and strategies you'll be able to use right away to be able to take the things we talked about and really run with them.
I will make sure all of that is in the show notes. But first and foremost, thank you so very much. That's a very generous gift for everybody. So thank you.
Yeah.
Mitch Matthews, Happy New Year. I hope 2026 is wonderful for you and everybody in your life. And thanks for being an incredible guest on the Mid-Career GPS podcast.
Thanks so much, John. I appreciate it. And I just love what you're doing. And it's an honor to be a part of it.
Right back at you. Thank you so much. Well, my friends, if there's one takeaway from this conversation with Mitch, here's what I want to offer you today. This year could be the opportunity for you to show up and give yourself permission to do something different. You know, it doesn't have to be anything magnanimous. It doesn't have to be anything ultra scary. But if you think about what Mitch talked about in terms of giving yourself 15 minutes a day, maybe it's you giving yourself permission to have a conversation with your spouse or your loved one about how happy you are in your job, or your work bestie, a trusted colleague, about what you want to do differently at work. Maybe it's about giving yourself permission to speak up in the room that you normally don't speak up in. Your mid-career GPS can guide you wherever it is you want it to go, but it can only do that when you have the clarity to know exactly what it is that you want. So until next time, my friends, remember this: you will build your mid-career GPS 1 mile or 1 step at a time, and how you show up matters. Make it a great rest of your day. Thank you for listening to the Mid-Career GPS podcast. Make sure to follow on your favorite listening platform. And if you have a moment, I'd love to hear your comments on Apple Podcasts. Visit johnnerrell.com for more information about how I can help you build your mid-career GPS, or how I can help you and your organization with your next workshop or public speaking event. Don't forget to connect with me on LinkedIn and follow me on social at John Nerrell Coaching. I look forward to being back with you next week. Until then, take care, and remember, how we show up matters.